You push open the tavern door with a creak that sounds far too loud. The stench hits first: sour ale, wet wool, something vaguely resembling cheese but more sinister. It's dark. Not cozy dark, not candlelit romantic dark. It's the kind of dark where shadows look at you first. And now, they're all looking. Every head. Every mug paused mid-sip. Every scarred brow lifts just slightly. You've walked into the wrong place. Or rather, you've walked in wrong. Your boots squelch against straw-covered mud that may have once been a floor. There's piss in it. That's not a metaphor. Somewhere to your right, a man coughs, the wet kind, as if he's trying to expel his ancestors. Someone mutters a prayer, another spits into the fire. You take a step forward. The air tastes of sweat, yeast, and unsaid threats. And now you must choose. Not a drink, not a meal. That comes later, if at all. No, what matters now, more than anything, is where you sit. Because in a medieval tavern, a chair isn't just wood. It's territory. It's allegiance. It's memory soaked into splinters. The wrong seat? That's a challenge, a confession, a death wish. And there are no signs to guide you, only glances, scars, and the tension in a jaw 2 tables away. The table near the hearth? Warm, welcoming, also claimed by a gang of pig farmers whose humor dies with outsiders. Sit there, and you'll learn how surprisingly sharp a rusted spoon can be. That lonely corner? Looks safe? Until you realize it's reserved by silence itself, the domain of 2 men who haven't spoken in 3 years, yet still drink together, bound by a blood pact over a goat-related incident no one speaks of anymore. The bench under the stuffed boar's head, the one with a dagger embedded in it, claimed by the butcher. Sit there, and you'll have to explain why your thigh deserves to keep its meat. You scan the room. Each table is a trap, a story, a grave disguised as a stool. And no one will warn you. No one will stop the mistake. Because in here, survival isn't based on strength. It's based on reading the room like a holy text. Fast, accurate, and without blinking. And you? You blinked. You sit. A small table, 3 seats, no occupants. It was a mistake. The man across the room, gray hair, one eye, fingers like gnarled roots, rises. Not fast, slowly, like he's been waiting. He doesn't say a word, just walks. Mug in hand. His shadow touches your table before he does. He doesn't ask you to move. That would be polite. This is not that kind of place. Instead, he stops, takes a sip, sets his mug down on your table. It thuds. The wood groans. Someone mutters, "God help him." But no one moves. You hear it now, low murmurs, chairs creaking as bodies lean closer. Not to stop it, to watch. This is the test. You stand, coward. You fight, dead. You smile, worse. You must become air, invisible, present, but forgettable. You must exude the energy of a stool, not the kind you sit on, the other kind. That might save you. He stares. Then, slowly, he picks up his mug and walks away. You exhale. You survived the first test. But know this. In this tavern, survival is temporary. Because no matter how quiet you stay, no matter how small you sit, eventually, someone will sit next to you. Someone whose brother died at this table. Someone who lost a bet here. Someone who remembers a laugh, a song, a betrayal that looks suspiciously like your face. In this world, history isn't written. It's bruised into flesh, spilled into ale, and whispered between clenched teeth. So drink carefully, speak less, and for the love of God, or whatever deity covers tavern brawls, never, ever sit at a table that looks too empty. It's empty for a reason. You notice her the way a rabbit notices the hawk. Too late, in mid-pounce. She threads between benches without grazing a single elbow, skirts ghosting across spilled ale, tray floating like a small moon. Her eyes count everything in the room. Mugs left half full, knuckles turning white around knife hilts, the nervous twitch of your own thumb. When her gaze finally parks on you, it feels like a ledger snapping shut. A mug thuds in front of you. You didn't order it. Foam slops over the rim, spreading a thin, sticky halo, an informal seal. Your fingers fumble for coins. The tavern's din folds in on itself until every jangle sounds treasonous. Under the edge of the table, something cold taps your shin, metal, patient, and polite. Her smile, if that quick tightening of the lips can be called one, suggests the ale is prepaid by whatever courage you have left. She turns, and the room's currents follow her. In most towns, the law calls people like her alewives, brew mistresses, keepers of thirst. Here she is, priest, watchman, and hangman rolled into one. The deadliest thing she carries is not the dagger under her apron, but the map she keeps in her head. Who hates whom, who owes whom, who is one insult from planting a face in the rushes. She smells tension like a dog smells rain. Once, they say, she cleared 3 tables seconds before a bench flew across the room, saving half a dozen skulls while charging each survivor double for the trouble. Her route across the floor is a lesson in quiet tyranny. At the hearth, she pauses just long enough to whisper in a pig farmer's ear. The man's laughter dies like a snuffed candle, and whatever argument was swelling at that table withers. Near the corner where 2 veterans sit in perpetual gloom, she nudges a jug a finger breadth to the left. Territorial demarcation everyone reads instantly. Not policing, exactly, more like pruning a rowdy hedge with invisible shears. When she circles back, you find the mug empty and can't recall finishing it. The taste lingers, smoked bread, hints of copper, a suggestion of nettle that prickles the tongue. She lifts the vessel, checks the bottom for cracks, then sets it down again, full. No coins have changed hands, you're certain of that. Yet the ledger in her mind has just acquired a fresh entry under your name, written in debts you don't yet understand. A shout erupts near the door, someone toasting a half-forgotten saint. The room stiffens. A toast can be an act of war. Entire towns have burned because a cup was raised to the wrong patron. The barmaid's eyes flick toward the sound, just a flick, but her hand slips behind her apron. You glimpse the hilt, dark wood polished by years of sweating palms. She never draws unless she means to use it, and she very rarely needs to. People simply remember the blade exists, and memory is usually enough. You catch yourself staring. She notices, of course. For a breath, you share a thin slice of silence that weighs more than anvils. She leans close, voice low enough to graze your ear. Last man who sat here, she says, thought a promise spoken over drink was still a promise in daylight. Her tone is calm, almost tender. But Dawn has a habit of showing teeth. Then she straightens and glides off, tray balanced like an accusation. Now you understand the rules, though no one wrote them. Tip with metal, not compliments. Keep your comparisons of ale strength to yourself unless you enjoy meeting clubwood. If she murmurs that the froth is restless, stand up and move before the froth turns red. Above all, never ask her real name. A named thing can be summoned, captured, ransomed. She has survived by remaining a rumor that pours beer. Across the room, a butcher rises, apron streaked with something too fresh to be entirely pig. Beside him stands a scholar in ink-stained cuffs, blinking like a man who knows equations but not consequences. Their gazes converge on your table, on the empty seat beside you, to be precise. Both begin to walk. Chairs scrape. Conversations decapitate themselves mid-word. The air smells suddenly of iron and expectation. You look for the barmaid. She's behind them, expression flat as a pond before a storm. Hard to say whether she orchestrated this collision or merely predicted it. To her, the difference is academic. What matters is what story the tavern will tell tomorrow. The butcher's cleaver against the scholar's quill, maybe, or the stranger who sat at the haunted table and became tonight's cautionary tale. There is a path to survival, though it is narrower than a prayer. Stand too quickly and you signal guilt. Stand too slowly and you invite challenge. Words may save you, but only if they weigh less than a breath and land softer than dust. Something resembling a smile, humble, ready to retreat, might placate the butcher's pride while flattering the scholar's vanity. It is a performance, and the barmaid is both audience and critic. You choose stillness. Fingers relaxed, shoulders lowered, eyes steady but not confrontational. The butcher stops a stride short. The scholar nearly bumps him and mutters an apology that sours in the air. They confer in whispers. Behind them, the barmaid raises one brow, a silent verdict. The scholar stammers about misreading a mark on the bench. The butcher grunts, half convinced. At last, they drift to another table, leaving a residue of tension in their wake. Your lungs remember how to inflate. Somewhere, a lute restarts its off-key tune. Conversation stitches itself back together, and the tavern resumes pretending it is merely a place to drink. Across the room, she wipes her dagger on a rag that might once have been white. She meets your eyes for a heartbeat. No smile, just a cool acknowledgement that the night still has room for your bones. The mug in front of you is somehow full again. You didn't see her pour it. You realize you're paying for more than ale now. You're paying rent on borrowed security, interest compounding with every swallow. So you drink, quietly, and let the ledger grow. Far better debts than wounds. Far better her vigilance than the mercy of chance. After all, in this tavern, the alewife's gaze is the thin wall between a few coins spent and a few teeth lost. No toast required. You take the next swallow of ale and feel it settling into the cracks of your courage. For a flicker, the tavern seems almost gentle, murmurs stitched together by low lute strings, the hearth throwing lazy sparks above drowsy pig farmer snores. But drink is a trickster. It loosens tongues, loosens grudges, loosens the last nail-holding sense inside a skull. Somewhere in this fog of voices, there is always a sentence that should stay unborn. Tonight, you hear it crawling out of a mason's mouth. The mason leans over a dice game, cheeks flushed to butcher red. He points a sausage finger at a shaggy mercenary across the table, mocking the man's accent, or maybe his mother, the difference small as a splinter. At first, it's just laughter, brittle and splattering, but the mercenary's smile freezes, then shatters. He drains his mug, stands, and sets it down harder than necessary. Foam erupts like a bad omen. You've seen farmers punch each other for practice, and monks break noses over hymns, but there's a distinct pitch to the air when ale turns serious, like hearing a bell before the hammer strikes. The temperature inside the room climbs, breath grows sweeter with anticipation. Even the barmaid, polishing a pewter pitcher, tilts her head the way a falcon marks prey on the field. The mason's companions shift, forming a half-circle wall of brick-sized shoulders. Blood warms the corners of their eyes. One spits. The mercenary's friends, weather-stained men whose armor is invisible but still clings to posture, move in behind him, knuckles rolling beneath rough skin. It's chess played with ribs. What ignites the first spark is nobody's fault, and everyone's, a jeer too loud, or the mercenary's hand brushing the mason's dice, or maybe simply the fact that 7 jugs have been emptied and stories of past battles now demand another body for tomorrow's retelling. Suddenly a mug arcs through lamplight, trailing amber droplets that glitter almost beautifully until they slap a spectator's cheek. That cheek belongs to a baker with a temper needed by 80-hour weeks and yeast that never rises fast enough. He lurches forward to swing at nobody in particular, and the fight blooms like rot. Benches flip, turning into shields. Trenchers become crude symbols when cracked across skulls. Someone grabs a stool leg, discovers it fits the hand like destiny, and smashes it against the mason's ear. A belt knife flashes. Not a killing blow, yet, but enough to write a thin red line across the back of a gambler's hand, the kind of wound that bleeds louder than it hurts. You cling to your table as tides of violence lap against its edges. The barmaid is a blur, steering fragile bodies away with shoves sharper than curses. She knocks a candlestick aside before it becomes a torch. She yanks one brawler backward by the collar just as a wooden plate scythes through the air. It splinters against a pillar, peppering the darkness with splinters that glitter like tiny falling stars. Then you hear it. A gulping roar, half cheer, half howl. The mercenary, hair stuck to his forehead in wet ropes, headbutts the mason hard enough that the sound seems to dent the night. The mason's blood spatters across the dice, staining pips that used to decide fortunes. Red seeps into grooves, turning chance itself carnivorous. Fear has its own scent, coppery, acidic, and it begins to rise. Gambler hands retreat into sleeves. Spectators remember prayers that haven't been recited since winter. But the drunker combatants are still climbing the ladder, oblivious that the roof missing above them is heaven's limit for patience. In the swirl, you spot a boy, maybe 12, pressed against the wall, eyes wide as pewter plates. He's holding a serving tray like a shield too light to matter. A wrestler-sized miller reels backward into the child's path, a dagger protruding from his thigh like a grotesque quill. The boy can't move, frozen, pinned by fear and the press of bodies. Instinct pushes your chair aside. You reach him, curl an arm around his shoulders, and drag him beneath your table. For an instant, the two of you crouch amid boots and spilled drink. The underside smells of damp bread and terror, but at least blades prefer taller targets. You hear wood cracking, glass shattering, the muffled thud of muscle meeting bone. Outside, thunder grumbles as if the sky itself is eavesdropping. A scream cuts through, a raw, high note that could belong to a man or a woman or a soul deciding to leave early. The fight has reached its spiral, the moment when deaths become likely and laughter impossible. You peek out. The mercenary wrestles a broken jug, shards gleaming like jagged teeth in his fist. The mason clutches his torn ear, face slick with blood, yet refuses to fall, driven by something crueler than pain. Then the barmaid appears beside them. She doesn't raise her dagger. She smashes a clay pitcher on the hearthstone, the crack louder than thunder. The room freezes, half from startle, half because the spilled ale sizzles on embers, coughing black smoke. Her voice slices through silence. A single name, the Mason's. Not his trade name, but the one only his mother and the priest use. Hearing it inside these walls is nakedness. It strips bravado the way rain strips plaster. The Mason's knees soften. He lowers his fists, panting. The mercenary, impressed or wary, follows suit. Around them, the circle breaks like a wheel losing spokes. Bruised men find excuses to check injuries, to cradle mugs, to laugh the kind of laugh that patches over broken dignity. Nothing has been solved, only postponed, but postponement counts as mercy here. Gradually the noise resets. Benches screech into alignment, dice rattle. Someone dares the lute to find its tune. All wounds will be compared tomorrow in better light, stories already inflating like lungfish in ale-soaked memories. The dice, still blotched red, lie untouched, their pips dark and silent. You release the trembling boy. He scampers toward the kitchen where noise turns domestic. The barmaid catches your eye. No nod. No thanks. Yet a corner of her mouth tilts. Smallest confirmation that, tonight at least, you sit on the side of the living. Your heart hammers bass notes against your ribs. You realize your own mug is missing, shattered somewhere in the carnage. She appears, almost magically, with a clean one, fills it from a fresh barrel, sets it down as if the last 15 minutes were a dream. Everyone politely agrees to forget. This time you pay before she asks, placing coins on the wood in a neat, obedient stack. She slides them into her apron and drifts away. Somewhere near the door, the mason mutters an apology wrapped in groans. The mercenary laughs, claps him on the shoulder, offers a bandage ripped from his own sleeve. Blood and ale mingle on the floor, indistinguishable in firelight, congealing into tomorrow's sticky reminder. You sip the new drink. It tastes the same as the old, yet somehow darker. The tavern exhales a weary sigh, as though satisfied by the night's tribute. And you sense, not for the last time, that every cup here carries two flavors, grain and danger. One warms the belly, the other keeps the instincts razor keen. Drink too deeply, forget the second, and the ale will run red again. Ale settles, anger settles, but shame hangs in the air like greasy smoke. A coppersmith with a split lip mutters to himself, polishing a bruise that will blossom purple by sunrise. Across from him, the baker tests a loosened tooth with his tongue and winces. Tomorrow, every loaf will taste faintly of iron. Someone finds the mason's dice, wipes them clean on a torn sleeve, and pockets them. Souvenir or evidence, impossible to say. A dog nosing around tables pauses at the red-spattered rushes, sniffs once, decides the night's leftovers aren't worth the story they tell, and shuffles off. The mercenary limps to the hearth, sits with a grunt, and begins humming a lullaby no one admits to knowing. His companions join on the chorus, off-key but warm, and a hush crackles through the room. Astonishment that such voices can coax softness out of the same throats that roared for blood minutes ago. Even the barmaid allows it. She leans against a beam, arms folded, gaze drifting toward the rafters where smoke scribbles slow runes. For the first time, you catch a whisper of weariness in her posture, as if lugging other people's tempers has weight no one else can feel. You notice the hearthstones glistening with spilled ale and sweat, the broken jug cradled by orange coals, its shards glowing like captive embers. A carpenter kneels to sweep the debris. Every scrape of pottery against stone rings a small requiem for fragile things. He works without complaint, penance perhaps for swinging a chair leg toward a man he's never met. In this tavern, guilt cleans up its own mess. Your own hands shake, not fear anymore. Aftershock, like the earth remembering an earthquake. You steady them around the mug, lift, and sip. The ale has gone lukewarm, but the throat welcomes any excuse to swallow. Each draft drags the knot of your nerves a finger's breadth farther down, and behind it creeps a recognition. You didn't bleed tonight. In a room that smells of rusted pennies, that counts as luck. The lullaby fades. Someone near the back coughs up phlegm, hawks it into the embers. The sizzle signals a return to habit. Conversation resumes in low hums, patched with brittle laughter, people telling half-formed quips to prove their teeth still fit inside their jaws. The barmaid begins her orbit again, collecting empty vessels, jotting silent tally marks in her memory. When she reaches you, she tips the mug, finds an inch of ale still clinging to the bottom, and leaves it, gesture of frugality or warning that you've had enough. A breeze slithers through cracked shutters, nipping sweat-soaked necks, and the tavern breathes out relief. You catch a glimpse of sky, a pale bruise of moon wading through cloud. Not yet midnight, but already the night feels old, as though it spent itself in a single brawl, and now must shuffle on arthritic joints until dawn. Someone hauls a small barrel into the center, taps it with ceremonial thumps. The first pour hisses, foams, steadies. No toasts this time, just quiet gratitude that the ale is still brown. They pass cups like contraband hope. You decline with a polite shake. The barmaid watches, noting the decision. Spare liver today, spare life tomorrow. Her ledger adjusts. Near the door, the mason, ear bandaged with a strip torn from his own tunic, offers a hand to the mercenary. They clasp forearms, pantomime forgiveness, and share what's left of a loaf pocked by splinters. The dice are gone, but fate still rattles between them, in grudges postponed, in scars still wet. Tonight, mercy is served as stale bread. They chew anyway. You press your palm flat against the table, feeling its tremor settling beneath the grain. For a heartbeat, the tavern holds still, a collective inhalation, as if everyone senses the fragile balance. One more careless word could tilt the scales again. But the moment passes. Routine swallows unrest. A potboy scatters fresh straw over congealing blood, stomps it down, and the floor looks almost clean if one squints hard enough to blur the red. You gather your cloak, nod at the barmaid. Her eyes flick to the door, then back to you. Permission granted, though whether you've earned it or she's simply finished with you is unclear. Outside, the air is colder, cleaner, smelling of damp earth and chimney soot. Behind you, the tavern door latches shut, muffling a renewed swell of voices. The night absorbs you, and your boots crunch through frost-edged dirt, carrying the taste of danger on your tongue. Somewhere a cock crows absurdly early, mistaking lantern light for dawn. You almost laugh. Instead, you whisper a promise to yourself. Tomorrow, you'll drink water, perhaps wine, anything but ale. Yet deep in your gut, you know you'll return. Because no safe cup ever tasted half this alive. You show up before the hearth embers are completely cold, hoping yesterday's blood has sunk deep enough into the straw to be ignored. The barmaid balances a tray on her hip and greets you with the faintest lift of the chin. Barely a welcome, mostly a warning. The butcher is in. Nobody says his name. The room treats it like spoiled meat. You soon spot him by process of elimination. He is the silence at a 6-person bench, the space other men leave the way sailors avoid holes in a deck. One arm, bare to the elbow, rests on the table, thick as a ham shank and scarred by blades that never reach the bone. The other hand dices bread with a cleaver so casual it looks like breathing. Across from him sits a millwright whose smile is splitting at the seams. He swears a debt has just been paid. Last autumn he promised the butcher a wagon load of oak in return for a side of bacon to cure a harsh winter. Oak was slow growing that season. Bacon disappeared the way bacon does. Now the millwright claims the slate is clean, waving a tiny wooden token stamped with the butcher's mark. Proof, he insists, that the account is settled. Around them, men hold their mugs still, waiting to see whether symbols outweigh memory. The butcher finishes slicing bread into oblong wafers, arranges them in a perfect line, and speaks so softly you can't hear from here. The millwright leans forward, token pinched between thumb and finger like a saint's relic. The butcher nods, almost approving. Then he lifts his cleaver an inch, lets it drop flat, just enough force to split the token into twin splinters and embed the blade half-depth into the table. Wood gasps. Every nearby drinker exhales in unison, the room's heartbeat resetting to caution. You edge closer, drawn in the way people gather at the lip of a well to stare into its dark. The millwright stammers about misunderstandings, about oaths and witnesses, and how oak takes time to season. The butcher listens with that same gentle nod, lifts the cleaver again, and with the blunt spine, taps once on his own elbow. A single question, wordless. What is a promise worth when it's already been digested? The millwright's eyes dart to the exit. 2 farmhands stand there now, discussing nothing, blocking nothing, just present enough to shorten the path between debt and consequence. You catch the butcher's face in profile, rounded cheeks, eyes almost merry, but the mouth hard as a gate latch. He asks something you can't hear. The millwright replies by emptying his purse on the table. A silver penny rolls, stops against the cleaver. The butcher tilts his head, lifts the blade an inch, lets the coin breathe. Then he points with the cleaver tip toward the door where the farmhands wait. Oak by dawn, the gesture says. Or marrow. The millwright scrambles off the bench. He backs away, nodding so hard his neck creaks, and slips outside into moonlit chill. The butcher plucks the broken token halves, pockets them as if collecting feathers, and returns the cleaver to its slow dance across bread. Conversation trickles back to life, but softer, like voices muffled behind chapel glass. Debtors take silent inventory of their sins. Promises shrink to fit the width of a coin. You take the empty seat nearest the butcher, because curiosity is a wolf that chews its leash. The barmaid sets down ale, disappears. The butcher glances at you, not hostile, merely measuring how much meat you carry on your bones. He breaks a wafer, offers half. You bite, it's spiced with something pungent, maybe juniper, or maybe the taste is just fear blooming on your tongue. He tells you, with surprising calm, about the oath that wasn't. The millwright swore on St. Hubert's feast, and St. Hubert is patron of hunters. Hunters chase flesh, thus the oath included bacon by implication. Logic as sharp as his blade, inarguable, yet the millwright tried to pay with timber months late. Meanwhile, the butcher's own debts, salt, rent, the priest's share, stack on his ledger like carcasses awaiting skinning. An unpaid promise, he says, rots faster than offal in July. His elbow, the one wearing scars like jewelry, shifts forward. He flexes it, letting lamplight reveal the white ridges where blades, teeth, perhaps even betrayal have tried and failed to open him. He calls these his receipts, every scar a record of someone who thought price and payment could be different things. You notice how the scars ladder downward. The closer they get to the wrist, the fresher they look. Lesson: the longer a debt lingers, the nearer the butcher cuts to the hand. Outside, hoofbeats clatter, likely the millwright hauling oak in moonlight to keep both wagon and conscience from breaking. The butcher's lips twitch, satisfied but not joyful. Justice, when rolled in salt, has little flavor left. He asks what brings you to his table. You consider lies but discard them. The scent of falsehood attracts his blade the way blood attracts flies. You answer truthfully, curiosity, thirst, perhaps an education in how oaths live or die here. He nods, carves another wafer, slides it to you. Curiosity, he says, is a debt one pays with attention. Keep watching, you'll learn the currency of survival. A clang at the door, 2 soldiers stagger in, uniforms mud-caked, bragging about spoils earned on a roadside campaign no one asked for. One slams his sword hilt on the bar, demanding wine on credit. The barmaid's eyes harden. Wine is dear, soldiers' promises cheaper than straw. She looks to the butcher, a silent consultation. He rises, not fast, simply inevitable, and the tavern tilts on its axis. The soldiers notice too late. Debt has put on an apron and hefted a cleaver. A hush spreads, heavier than helmets. You realize you are holding the butcher's last slice of bread, crumbs stuck to your fingers like tiny white flags. You place the slice back where it came from, stand, and step aside. The butcher passes, nodding once to acknowledge the respect. The cleaver gleams, eager to tally more receipts. You understand suddenly why oaths matter here more than laws. Laws are distant, busy with kings and councils. Oaths are local, enforced by elbows and edged iron. In their shadow, survival behaves itself. From the doorway comes a metallic thud, cleaver meeting sword hilt, argument about to become arithmetic. You choose that moment to settle your own account. 2 coins on the table, payment for lessons rendered. You slip out the side door while everyone's attention leans forward, drawn by the promise of a fresh scar. Behind you, wood splits, steel rings, and an oath fractures with a sound not unlike bone. Ahead, night stretches quiet, and you swear, privately, fervently, with no witnesses, that tomorrow you will owe nothing to anyone who carries a blade. You keep walking, hand over elbow, feeling for skin still unmarked, hoping to keep it that way one more day. Dusk folds you back into the tavern, as though the night before were just a shiver you forgot to shake off. Ash from yesterday's brawl lies tamped under a new layer of straw, but the floor feels restless, as if bruises beneath the rushes remember which boots made them. The butcher is gone, his ledger carried elsewhere, yet the air still smells faintly of ironed threats. Tonight, the center of gravity is a low, round table near the window, candle stumps guttering atop it, dice clattering like teeth in a tin cup. The men around that table, 6, maybe 7, impossible to count because they lean and shift like crows on a carcass, share a single expression. The grin of soldiers who survived fighting only to realize peace costs more. Their armor is gone, pawned long ago for beer and bandages, but war still rides their spines. One sports a leather patch over a missing ear. Another has shoulders slanted by an arrow never properly pulled. The candles carve trenches in their faces, turning every laugh line into a wound that never healed. Dice tumble. They're not wooden cubes from some innocent child's game. These are polished knucklebones, scooped from men unlucky enough to die without friends to claim the meat. Tiny holes for pips are inked with soot and maybe dried blood. When they roll, they click against each other with an almost cheerful rhythm, like bones gossiping about the men who once owned them. Stakes scatter across the table, copper coins, a silver spur, a leather purse whose stitched edge glows wet, freshly cut from someone's belt. And there, wedged between 2 tankards, lies a finger, not a sausage, not a carving from a butcher's block, an actual human finger, pale, shriveled, topped by a cracked nail still holding a sliver of dirt. Its owner sits opposite, hand wrapped in ragged linen, eyes blazing with a fever that isn't medical. The stump bleeds through the cloth in slow pulses matching the throw of the dice. He laughs anyway, though the sound peels at the edges. You know the rule here. Stand too close. The table drags you in. Curiosity, once again, yanks your collar. A gap opens between two hulking veterans, invitation or trap, and you step forward, greeted by the sour tang of sweat soaked into wool. A balding man with scarred cheekbones gestures at a stool. Sit, his nod says, or leave before the bones decide for you. Someone shoves a cup of something raw and brown into your hand. It tastes like boiled fear and moss, but you swallow to prove you belong. The dealer, if that term applies to a man missing half his nose, grins, revealing teeth that look whittled. He snaps his fingers, knuckle bones clink into your palm, still warm from previous throws. Their weight is unsettlingly intimate, like holding another man's secrets. Before you can speak, wagers fling down. 2 coins, a pewter brooch shaped like a lion, a rusty spur, and a promise scribbled on parchment that simply reads, "One night's work." The bleeding gambler, not to be outdone, slices free a strip of linen from his own bandage, drops it in the pile. Blood blooms on the table, worming into candle wax drips. He grins at you. Your steak? The men lean. You pat your pockets, mostly lint and leftover fear. Finally, you draw out a small bone charm from your cloak, nothing more than a whittled bird you picked up from a market child moons ago. It seems childish here, yet the men murmur approval. Superstition is a valid currency. The charm lands among the coins with a faint clack, a tiny dove amid vultures. The dice roll from your palm. One flips, stalls, settles on a 5. The other skitters toward the edge, wobbling on a chipped corner before showing a 3. 8. Nods all around, respectful but not impressed. A bearded veteran downs his drink, growls, and scoops the dice. They vanish in his bare palm, rattle, then spill like prophecy. 1, then 1 again. The table roars, lowest possible. He laughs harder than anyone, slaps his own cheek in mockery, and pushes a coin toward you, a consolation or a lure. Hard to tell. Round after round the bones circle, clink, roll, gasp, curse, laugh, repeat. They gather stories with every circuit. Coins migrate, charms trade owners, pride slides back and forth like a greased pig. The bleeding man wins nothing, yet keeps doubling stakes, fever fountain in his eyes. You taste iron in the air, anticipation sharpening into something surgical. At last he lifts his battered fist, blood-soaked rag dangling. Stake enough, he slurs. In his other hand appears a dagger, hilt carved with saints who look away in shame. He unrolls the bandage further, exposing raw flesh. The stump glistens. No one blinks. He sets the dagger on the table, palm flat beside it. Double or bones, he says. Translation, another finger for another roll. A hush swallows the room. Even the barmaid pauses mid-pour, tray angled like a shield. You realize the tavern has drifted closer, drinkers edging near, breathing the same ragged rhythm. Was it courage, madness, or merely the momentum of the night that makes you answer? You slide all your winnings, coins, brooch, bloodied linen scrap, into the pot. Then you place your own left hand on the table, fingers spread. The crowd exhales. The candle flames bend as though the air itself withdraws in shock. The bleeding gambler's grin widens, not predatory exactly, more like relief that someone else finally speaks his language. Dealer snatches the bones, shakes them so hard they clatter like hail inside his fist. He pauses, kisses the dice, lip imprint on cold ivory, and hurls them. The first lands 6, the second spins, slower, slower, wobbling toward the jagged drop between planks. It tilts, shows 2, then rolls one last time, settles on 4. 10. Breaths suspend like dust motes. Your turn. The bones feel heavier than before, or perhaps that's your pulse swelling in your fingers. You picture every scar you've seen, the butcher's elbow, the barmaid's hidden blade, the millwright's blood-glazed ear. They blur into a single lesson. Flesh is coin. You roll. One knuckle bone leaps, caroms off the finger on the table, his, not yours, spins, lands 5. The other arcs toward the candle puddle. For a second, the flame paints it molten, then it drops into cooling wax, freezing mid-spin, showing 5, 11. The hush shatters into a howl. Arms wrap your shoulders, mugs slam in salute. Someone's laughter cracks like timber under an axe. The bleeding gambler stares, mouth slack, disbelief diluting pain. He studies his knife, his remaining fingers, the pool of wax hardening around the bone that decided his fate. Then he lowers the blade. He pushes the entire pot, coins, brooch, bloody linen, even his severed finger, toward you. Debt paid. But you see the tremor in his eyes, hear the creak in the room. Victory here is just one breath ahead of envy. You gather only the coins and the brooch, leave the finger behind like a failed offering, and back away. No gloating. Gratitude etched in humble nods. The barmaid meets you near the bar, flicks a look at your intact hand, and pours water. Clear, cold, merciful. You drink like a man kneeling at a holy spring. Behind you, the bones roll again for someone else, eager, tireless, certain that sooner or later the house, this living, bleeding house, always wins. You close your fist around a fistful of coins that suddenly feel as light as feathers and just as likely to fly. Tomorrow you might trade them for bread or balm or passage out of town. But tonight they remind you your fingers are still attached. You offer the barmaid 2 coins for the water. She takes 1. The other, she says, voice quiet as dust settling, is for the finger you didn't claim. Mercy costs as well. You pay, and she pockets the coin without pleasure. Stepping into the night, you flex your hand, feeling how fragile skin is over bone. The moon is a chipped die above the rooftops, rolling endlessly through cloud banks. You decide not to gamble on how many throws remain before it shows snake eyes for you. For once, you turn the corner toward home instead of back into the tavern's door. Behind you, dice clatter like distant drums, keeping score for the devils that haunt men's luck. The tavern's door groans just wide enough for a procession of dripping candles, a monk in boots far too new for penance, and a country priest whose cassock smells of damp straw and ambition. Rain flicks off their shoulders, puddling at their feet like a portable font. Everyone inside glances up, weighing the odds that faith tonight is a blessing or a spark. They carry no weapons you can see, only a pewter crucifix as thick as a fist and a travel chalice sloshing with wine the color of bruised plums. The monk keeps the cup covered with his sleeve, guarding every spill as if eternity might leak out. The priest cradles the cross, thumb rubbing its edge the way a gambler strokes loaded dice. You smell incense ghosting their robes, chased by cheaper smoke. Someone tried burning pine cones to freshen the room, and now the air is half church, half chimney. The barmaid's brow furrows. Holy men drink, yes, but they bring the politics of heaven, and politics never pays its tab. A hush fans outward as the pair approach the long bench. The men already seated there, millers, drovers, one woman in a patched green cloak, shuffle to make space. Not generosity, fear of looking inhospitable to God's middle managers. You would have stayed clear, but a shoulder in the crowd nudges you forward. Suddenly, you're kneeling on the bench between a drover who reeks of wet wool and the new arrivals, staring straight at the monk's knees. The priest sets the crucifix on the table with a soft metallic thump, as if planting a standard. Candles surround it, flames bowing in the draft. He raises his cup, offers a blessing half mumbled, half rehearsed. The Latin fragments drip like candle grease, sticky, unintelligible, still somehow painful when they hit your ears. He sips first, passes the chalice to the monk, who drinks like a man swallowing courage. Then the cup lands in front of you. Expectation thickens. Refuse, and you insult heaven. Accept, and you share whatever invisible oath rides that wine. The rim is cool against your lips. The taste kicks like pepper under sweet grapes, finishing with iron. You hand it on and try not to wipe your mouth. The bench begins to shift, bodies leaning into discussion. Scripture surfaces, then sinks beneath gossip about a lord's new mistress rumored to eat meat on Fridays. Laughter rises, soft at first, then sharper. Someone jabs at the priest with a question. Which sin is worse, gluttony of flesh or gluttony of power? He answers smoothly, polished as altar brass. But there's a tremor in his grip on the cross. He feels the net tightening. The monks turn. He quotes an obscure theologian, voice slurring where Latin phrase into Tavern dialect. The drover to your right chuckles, mispronounces the monk's holy citation, and the bench ripples with snickers. The priest clinks the cross against the table, a metallic cough demanding respect. Silence stutters back, but irreverence has already planted seedlings. Wine keeps circling, the chalice heavier, or lighter, depending on how much dogma you carry. After the third round, the drover bangs the rim with a spoon. If God sees all, he asks, eyes glossy, why hide your sins under robes? The monk's cheeks flame scarlet. He mutters penance, but the drover presses, confess here, show us the color of your soul. A bravado dare, half joke, half-lit match. The priest sets the crucifix upright, candlelight skating along its arms. He quotes judgment, thunder, brimstone brewed just for insolence. Yet you catch the quiver in his jaw. Maybe he's tasted the same wine too many times, worried it no longer transubstantiates into anything but trouble. The barmaid, tray poised, hovers like a raven deciding which corpse will spoil first. Her eyes fix on the crucifix. Years of overheard theology tell her icons draw blades as magnet draws iron filings. She edges closer to the hearth poker. The drover seizes the chalice, raises it high, liquid gemstones shimmering in firelight, and toasts Saint Nothing in particular. A laugh breaks across the room. The priest lunges forward, wine splashes his sleeve, drops like dark roses bloom on white linen. The monk grabs the cup, yanks, and suddenly metal sings as copper coins clatter to the floor. Gamblers nearby upend a purse to save the drink from spilling. Coins roll under tables, chasing pious panic. The monk's sleeve slips. On his forearm is ink, black and fresh. A crude sigil, heretical, if the old sermons are right. Gasps bloom like bruises. The priest freezes. The ink glares back, accusation etched in skin. Someone mutters, witchcraft. Another murmurs, heresy. Words sharpen. The bench seems to crawl away beneath you, leaving feet planted on shifting ground. The barmaid steps in, poker now visible, glowing faintly orange at the tip. She taps it once on the table, sparks fizzle. House rule, she says, calm as closing lids. No damnation served with drink. The priest rises, face ash white. He reaches for the crucifix, but the drover's wool sleeve snags the chain. The cross flips, clatters, lands face down. A collective inhale. In stories, stones split when such things happen. Here, only nerves split. Yet someone, was it you, writes the cross, brushing off ash as though dusting crumbs from bread. The tension trembles, a glass ready to crack under its own note. Outside, thunder rolls. Summer storm announcing itself like an archangel late to the sermon. Lightning stutters through shutters, illuminating the monk's ink again. The drover laughs, says lightning burns sin out of sky. Why not flesh? His hand hovers near the monk's wrist, daring to scrub the mark clean with skin. The monk shoves back. The chalice tumbles. Wine arcs, splashes the candles, extinguishes two with hissing sighs. The tavern's light dims, edges of faces carved by sudden shadow. The priest utters a curse too worldly for scripture, lunges, fist aimed at the drover's jaw. The drover ducks. Momentum flings the priest into a stool, ribs colliding with oak. Whispered theology bursts into guttural vowels. You stand to dodge the chaos, knocking your mug into the lap of the woman in green. She laughs, sharp, delighted, and flings residual ale at the monk's tattoo. Wine and ale mix, running down his arm like diluted blood. The mark blurs, but does not vanish. The barmaid's poker stamps the floor once, echoing iron authority. She addresses the room. Rain outside, roof overhead, drink still pours. Who needs more miracles? Her grip says next miracle involves skulls and glowing iron. The priest cradles his side, monk panting, drover flicking ale from his beard. No one quite ready for second blows. Candle stubs sputter back to life, small halos daring the darkness. The chalice lies dented but upright, half full, a compromise nobody likes but everyone accepts. Slowly benches slide, mugs refill, conversation knits itself raggedly. The barmaid returns the poker to embers, wipes the table with a rag dark enough to hide any confession. Overhead, the roof drums with forgiving rain. The monk adjusts his sleeve, hiding ink that everyone has already memorized. The priest whispers an apology to no one, or maybe to the wine. You sit, heart hammering like a pilgrim's drum, and realize belief here is poured like ale. An excuse to get warm, sometimes to get violent, rarely to get saved. The crucifix glints in candlelight, faint halo carved from pewter, promising nothing certain except wait. You leave it lying there, unclaimed, while thunder rolls on, counting seconds between fury and forgiveness. Later, after the monk's sleeve has dried and the priest's ribs have stopped clicking like mismatched rosary beads, the tavern exhales a slow, exhausted breath. People drift into their own silences, pushing mugs back and forth, afraid of whatever sermon might still be lurking in the shadows. That is when you notice the lonely table in the far corner, the one everyone seems to lean away from without quite realizing it. It is nothing special at first glance. A squat round slab of oak, blackened by generations of spilled drink. One chair, high-backed, sits with its spine flush against the wall. No other stools crowd it. The closest lantern is always trimmed so low, the spot looks like a bruise on the room. When a stray dog once wandered in and curled beneath that chair, the barmaid shooed it away with uncharacteristic urgency, muttering words that tasted like salt and old prayers. A stable hand whispers that 3 winters back a minstrel took that seat, sang a song nobody remembers, and stopped breathing between verses. Heart, poison, curse, depending on who retells the tale. A drover insists his brother sat there on a dare, drank, joked, then walked outside and walked on and on and on, past fields, rivers, border stones, never again seen in flesh or rumor. Some swear a rune is carved under the seat, deep enough to bleed splinters, but nobody volunteers to check. Curiosity, that relentless tick in your skull, drags you closer. The room seems to reveal new geography. Benches bulge outward as you slip by, breaths catch, but nobody speaks. The barmaid notices. Her jaw sets the way stone sets under a mason's chisel. She wipes the nearest table twice, very slowly, as though cleaning futures rather than wood. Then she returns to pouring ale for men suddenly fascinated by the bottoms of their cups. You stop 2 paces from the empty chair. Candlelight avoids that corner. What flames reach it gutter as though pulled by a draft that smells of cellars and damp leather. A single coin lies on the tabletop, greasy with age. You can't tell it's mint or monarch, only that one edge glints sharper than any coin should. Your hand lifts without asking permission, hovering over the seat back, fingertips measuring distance as if the air itself were dangerous to touch. The moment is long, taut, humming like a bowstring. Behind you, the tavern's noise thins into a hush, stitched with small prayers and swallowed oaths. Even the hearth seems to breathe quieter. Someone coughs. The sound ricochets across rafters, breaks the spell. You snatch your hand back. A draft licks your knuckles, icy as river water in thaw. Goose flesh rises along your arm. It feels like the chair exhaled. An old mason, half hidden behind a pillar, clears his throat with gravel and ale. "Leave it," he murmurs, not quite looking at you. Lines in his face deepen. Wood remembers. The barmaid appears beside him, fresh mug in hand, though nobody saw her cross the floor. She places the drink, then turns to you. No threat in her eyes tonight, only a tired softness sharp as winter dawn. "Sit elsewhere," she says, so quietly you wonder if she has spoken at all. You try a smile, a shrug, some gesture to claim bravery you do not feel. The tavern seems to lean forward in one slow creak, waiting. Your own heartbeat knocks at your ribs like a debtor at a bolted door. A thought sprouts, ridiculous, lucid. If you sit, history will reach up through the wood and close around your ankles. The candle closest to the haunted table flickers tall, sputters, and dies in a twist of smoke. Nobody moves to relight it. A dog outside gives a single sharp bark, then silence again. You step back. The room relaxes around you, a collective muscle unclenching. Voices return in cautious trickles. A joke about sheep, a complaint about taxes, the gentle slap of dice in a palm. You retreat toward a safer bench, but before you turn away, you swear the coin on the haunted table looks brighter, as though freshly polished. Maybe it always did. Hours bleed by. Ale sloshes, songs wander off key, fatigue laces every spine. At last the door bangs open and the wind herds in a stumbling pilgrim, robe soaked, eyes raw from too many miles. He scans the crowded room, sees every seat taken, every seat but one. Grateful strangers lift their mugs, gesturing him onward. The barmaid's mouth opens in warning that arrives a heartbeat too late. He crosses the floor, dripping a snail trail of rain, and drops into the vacant chair. He does not shudder or gasp. He sighs, one long breath of relief, as though easing into a warm bath. The coin clicks under his elbow. He sets his pilgrim's staff against the wall, tilts his head back, and closes his eyes, smiling at something unshared. What you notice first is how sound withdraws from him. Laughter dulls, dice still, the lute player lowers his pick mid-strum. It feels like listening underwater, everything muffled, distant. The pilgrim's breathing slows until each inhale seems carved from stone. Then his smile fades, his brow knits, as if dreaming of debt collectors. His hands curl around invisible burdens. A tremor flits through his shoulders. Seconds stretch waxen long. No one dares move. Rain stutters against the shutters, impatient. The pilgrim's head bows. A soft clap, chin to chest. His body sags, heavy, but does not collapse. The chair holds him with the indifference of a trap already sprung. No twitch, no gasp, no last word. Only stillness so complete it looks staged. No one rushes forward. They have seen men die, on roads, in fields, by blade and bowel rot, but seldom this quietly. The barmaid sighs, gathers a cloth, and approaches. She looses the coin from beneath the pilgrim's elbow and slides it into her apron. His staff she lays across his folded arms, a gesture oddly tender. She looks to you, then to the door. It is not command, but invitation. Breathe fresh air. Wash the omen from your lungs. You obey, stepping into drizzle that tastes of cold tin. Behind you, chairs scrape as men shift further from that corner, reacquainting themselves with mortality and ale. Tomorrow the chair will still be there, empty, waiting, coin polished and glinting like temptation cut thin. You suspect the barmaid will keep the door unlatched just wide enough for another pilgrim, another minstrel, another fool. Taverns live on trade, rumor, and the soft patter of cautionary ghosts, and some seats are reserved for stories no one sane should volunteer to finish. You know the place by smell before sight, the back left pocket of the tavern where torches never last, and shoeless feet find puddles they immediately regret. The rushes are changed here less out of hygiene than surrender. Fresh straw merely soaks, stains, and turns traitor within an hour. Everyone calls it the piss corner, though it manages far worse than urine on a crowded night. The floor slopes, almost politely, guiding the runoff of spilled ale, guttering rainwater, and human desperation into a shallow trough hacked from the boards. A rat once tried to drink there, so the story goes, and keeled over in mid-lap, stiff as a sermon. The corner is ruled not by drunks, but by men who stay deliberately half-sober, veterans of gutter politics and bodily functions. They sit on an overturned keg and 2 crates, never on stools. Stools wobble, but crates plant their legs in filth like stubborn shrubs. Their names drift between tables on sour breath: Stump, Goad, and Father Jape. Stump lost his lower right leg to a mill wheel and replaced it with an iron rod shod in leather. He thumps it once against the slats when someone asks permission to pass. Goad carries a hook where fingers once lived and runs a side business retrieving lost dice, rings, or teeth from beneath benches, for a fee calculated by shame. Father Jape isn't clergy. He earned the title by keeping a prayer book in one pocket and a blackjack in the other, offering whichever seemed more useful. Why stay here? Because everyone in a tavern eventually needs this corner. When bladders bulge and secrets overflow, patrons cross the floor, eyes watering, praying the 3 gatekeepers let them do their business unmolested. Most pay a toll, a coin, a swig, sometimes a confessed sin for Father Jape's ears alone. The corner functions like a customs house of bodily truth, and its rulers keep ledgers no magistrate will ever see. Tonight, the tavern is swollen. Rain drives travelers indoors, and the last brawl left half the benches cracked, forcing bodies closer together. The piss corner overflows, literally, and patrons queue halfway to the bar, hopping from foot to foot like penitent frogs. Stump taps his iron rod twice, summoning patience or fear. Goad flicks his hook along the rim of a tin cup, sending a metallic whine through the line. Father Jape chants a psalm under his breath, the melody weaving unease into the damp air. A merchant in velvet tries skipping the toll. He strides, nostrils flared, clutching his robe with 2 dainty fingers so it clears the sludge. Stump's rod blocks him at kneecap height. The merchant protests, waving a wax-sealed letter as if parchment exempts kidneys from bursting. Goad leans forward, hook glinting. One quick tug could open robe, purse, or artery with equal ease. The merchant relents, fishes out a silver penny, drops it in Father Jape's cup. Silver rings like temple bells. Every ear nearby records the sound. Stump steps aside. The merchant's relief is loud, almost triumphant, until a sudden splash tells him the trough disguised its depth. Laughter ripples down the queue. A barefoot girl with hollow cheeks approaches next, cradling a wooden bowl. No coins, only a plea. Her mother sick, her wages gone on physic that didn't work. Father Jape studies her eyes, searching for the soft shine of liar's guilt. Finding none, he nods at Stump, who lifts his rod. Goad offers her a ragged scrap of cloth to wrap around each ankle. Toll paid in pity, ledger marked in favor. Mercy yields interest here. Someone spared today might remember tomorrow who spared them. Your own bladder begins to chime, a dull iron bell behind the navel. You shuffle forward, counting the people ahead, calculating time against muscle. At last you reach the throne of crates. Stump's rod lowers. Goad's hook clicks the cup rim. Pay. You drop a copper. Modest coin for a modest need. Father Jape's eyes, mild and oddly kind, catch yours. Confession? He asks, voice rotted by smoke and grace. You shake your head, feeling you've confessed enough to every pair of eyes in this tavern since the day you walked in. He shrugs. Absolution is optional but encouraged. Stump tilts his head toward the trough. Permission granted. Air thickens as you step forward. Boots sink half an inch into straw stew. The smell claws up nostrils, but necessity overrules disgust. You brace one hand on the wall, rough boards slick with centuries, and let go of everything you've been holding. Steam rises. Somewhere overhead, rain drums praise on the roof. For a moment, you belong to the simplest brotherhood in history, people who must release or rupture. On your way back, you notice a gambler you beat at dice earlier. He's next in queue, but his eyes aren't on the trough. They're on your purse string. Reeking gloom emboldens thieves. You angle your body, shielding coins without looking obvious. Stump notices too, rod flexing like a drawn bow. The gambler hesitates, recalculates risk versus bladder, and decides tonight is not the night to bleed over coppers. He shoves past you, nearly tripping in slick straw. Goad's hook catches his sleeve, yanks him upright with just enough pain to make a lesson. Father Jape mutters a blessing behind your ear as you retreat, the kind that sounds suspiciously like insurance. You nod, leave 2 extra coppers in the toll cup, one for the girl's ankles, one for the merchant's arrogance. Coins jangle, ledger updates. The piss corner has memory long as the stink it breathes. Crossing the room, you inhale fresher air flavored with smoke, sweat, and the faint perfume of roasted onions. Compared to the corner, it smells like spring. You reach your bench lighter in body and slightly lighter in coin, but richer in understanding. Power can bloom even in the darkest puddle. Authority can wield a hook or a prayer with equal efficiency. And every man, saint or scoundrel, eventually bows before the call of internal rivers. Behind you, Stump's rod thumps once, gate closing, until the next soul comes begging relief and bargaining dignity. There is a patch of darkness in the tavern that never quite belongs to the firelight. It squats beneath the loft stairs, just wide enough for a single table slick with age-faded varnish. No chair scrapes there unless summoned. No lamp dares crawl too close. The regulars call it the shadow table, the way soldiers name a battlefield they'd rather forget, because anything placed upon it seems to lose weight, sound, sometimes intention. Coins land without clink, mugs sweat without dripping. Words, should someone be foolish enough to utter them, seep straight through the wood and vanish. Tonight 3 figures occupy the dusk. A lean man with fingers like quills, a broad woman whose hood hides everything except lips the color of dried cranberries, and a youth pale enough to look unfinished. They sit in a triangle, each facing a wall rather than each other, as if conversation were a sin with witnesses. None drink, none blink. At intervals, the woman's hand drifts across the table, just her fingertips, making the faintest tap, 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 then returning to stillness. The man replies with a single knock from a knuckle, barely audible over the hearth. The youth never moves, yet somehow completes the exchange simply by existing. You cannot parse the code, only feel its gravity. Spies, the barmaid once muttered when the subject circled too near her broom. Messengers for the Lord, keepers of parchment that bleeds when pried open. Somebody tried last harvest, she said, an eager mill boy who fancied himself loyal to the wrong banner. They found him dangling in the owl roost, tongue black with secrets he didn't have time to swallow. After that, the tavern learned to let the shadow table breathe in peace. But human eyes wander, and yours are no exception. When you look toward that corner, you find your gaze drawn as though the candle flames bend around it, pointing you like arrows. The rest of the tavern hums, dice rattling, Stump's iron peg thudding, Father Jape preaching bladder salvation, but the hum seems distant, padded by cotton. All focus distills to the trio and the silent air knitting them together. A traveling bard strides in, lute slung across his back like an optimistic hunch. He's fresh from some festival, cloak bright enough to mock the tavern's gloom. The crowd parts for showmanship. Applause flutters from tables, half genuine, half hungry for distraction. He bows, sweeps the room with shining teeth, plants himself, of all cursed places, beside the shadow table. A song for those who guard the night, he announces, strumming a chord that rings sweet and naive. The broad woman's lips purse. One crimson finger lifts from the table's surface, just enough to hush a ghost. The bard mistakes it for invitation. He shifts closer, searches for a smile, finds only the polished dark of her hood. Undeterred, he launches into lyrics about falcons and faithful hearts. His voice is good, too good in fact. Notes float high enough to brush the rafters, scattering dust like startled moths. The sound drifts toward the trio, sits there a moment, then thins as if strangled midair. He doesn't notice. He's performing for himself now, eyes closed, foot tapping time. Tap, tap, tap. The woman's fingers drum once more. The lean man's knuckle answers. The youth exhales, slow and final, as though resigning a last breath to history. The bard lands his flourish, expecting cheers. Instead, nothing. The tavern has gone very still, forked between attention and dread. Even the piss corner pauses in mid-slurp. You feel an ache blooming in your chest where applause should live. Confused, the bard addresses the trio. A request, perhaps? His smile trembles, betrayed by instinct. A ballad of your choosing? The youth's eyes, void pools ringed by sleepless bruises, lift to the bard's face. No malice, no kindness, simply an assessment of how little this man matters. Then the youth lowers his gaze again. The bard's hand slips on the strings, striking a sour chord that reverberates like a snapped tendon. He chuckles, tries recovery, but mischief dies in the dry gulch of silence. The broad woman raises her crimson lips a fraction, enough to reveal a small, deliberate scar slicing the lower one. She taps the table a third time. You notice the barmaid moving, tray abandoned. She crosses the room with the unwavering purpose of a midwife or an executioner, eyes fixed not on the bard but on the lute. She stops at his elbow, palm upward. He stares, baffled. "I haven't been paid," he stutters, meaning the coin for tune. She does not speak. With glacial slowness, the lean man's finger extends, points to the lute, then drops. The message could not be clearer if carved in bone. Leave the instrument, leave with your tongue. Reluctantly, trembling, the bard transfers the lute to the barmaid's hands. Strings hiss under changed tension. She nods once, pity or apology, and retreats behind the bar, where she lays the lute atop the casks like a lamb for slaughter. It will remain there, unplayed, until some agreeable future decides it safe. Perhaps never. The bard backs away, shoulders collapsing inward. When he reaches ordinary tables, the spell loosens. Sound returns, glasses clink, a laugh erupts, too loud, too fragile. He finds a stool near the hearth and sits hunched, clutching invisible warmth, eyes fixed on his own empty fingers. A fresh mug appears in front of him, courtesy of a traveler who understands grief at first sight. He sips, shivers, vanishes into anonymity. The tavern's rhythm recovers like a heartbeat after a skipped beat, pumping ale and chatter until color bleeds back into cheeks. Yet the shadow table remains untranslated. The trio resumes their semaphore in miniature, fingertip to wood, knuckle to grain, silence inhaled, silence released. Whatever secrets move, their travel by tremor, not tongue. You wonder if the floorboards funnel messages through pipes of ancient knots, straight into ears pressed against distant walls. The Lord's stewardship of rumor. Dawn eventually puddles at the windows, silvering tankards and the still unplayed lute. The trio stands as one, chairs barely whispering. They exit single file, leaving no payment, yet no one dares mark them as debtors. When the door shuts, the quiet they carried lingers like incense, seeping into rafters. The barmaid fetches the lute and, with a tenderness usually reserved for broken bones, props it by the hearth. Flames catch the varnish, painting it twilight red. The bard watches, but dares not touch. Perhaps tomorrow, she seems to say without words, when the shadow table is empty again, and the night's throat has cleared. You glance toward that corner. For the first time, it looks truly vacant, yet not inviting. More like a grave after the mourners leave, the mound still warm, the earth unwilling to forget. A single splinter stands upright on the tabletop, pointing nowhere, accusing nothing, evidence of messages delivered. You feel a shiver that starts in your teeth, travels down spine and fingertips, and settles in the soles of your feet. The tavern's ordinary din cannot drown it. Somewhere outside, morning bells ring for the Angelus. Inside, nobody notices. The only prayer worth uttering here is a vow of silence. And at the shadow table, that vow has already been memorized in wood. It starts with a hush so sharp, it trims every sentence in half. The tavern door swings inward and pulls the night in around two figures, a woman wrapped in a travel-stained cloak the color of wilted violets, and behind her another, shorter face, shadowed by a hood, patched more times than it was ever whole. Rainwater purls on their hems, and somewhere under the cloth, steel glints like a swallowed secret. Women do appear here, but usually in twos and threes, escorted by custom or coin, faces painted with forced laughter. They orbit candles, trade jokes for jugs, and drift back into lanes before dawn yanks the mask away. These two carry no mask. They carry intent. Every man who raised a mug now lowers it just enough to clear the view. Dice freeze mid-tumble, lute strings slacken, even Stump's iron peg stutters off rhythm. The newcomers stand in the doorway a heartbeat longer than manners allow, taking measure of the stew, steam, smoke, men, menace, then advance. The violet cloak surveys the room as if picking a battlefield, gaze snagging on each cluster of shoulders to decide which sets are soft enough to part. Her companion keeps a hand inside the hood, knuckles flexing, maybe on a blade, maybe on courage. When Violet spots the butcher's abandoned bench, a kingdom without a king, she steers toward it, boots whispering through straw. No man moves to intercept. The bench belongs to fear tonight. She sits, back straight, cloak parting just enough to show boots polished but splattered with mud. Hooded one slides beside her, small as a sparrow but coiled. They don't order. They wait. Across the room, a gambler elbows a comrade, wagers in low voices on names, on prices. Prostitute, runaway bride, witch. The words flit like moths near a candle that remembers burning wings. The barmaid approaches with practiced neutrality, mug and pitcher balanced. Before she can speak, Violet lifts a purse to eye level and shakes. 3 coins clink loud as chapel bells. The barmaid nods once, accepts the purse, pours dark ale, and leaves them be, pocket heavier, but expression unchanged. They drink differently. Most here knock back ale like drowning men meet air. These women sip, letting liquid linger on their tongues as if tasting prophecy. It unnerves the room. Soon whispers fill gaps where laughter should live. Father Jape pretends to scrub his prayer book but angles eyes for eavesdropping. Goad taps his hook against the crate, impatient to classify. You feel the tavern's pulse quicken, the way a horse shifts when it smells lightning long before thunder. The violet woman speaks, soft, a curl of smoke, and the hooded one laughs, a laugh sharp enough to cut silk. Men glance away, unsure why a private joke stings like a public insult. Then the door bangs again. A farmhand tumbles in, cheeks ruddy, words already slurring. He jolts at the sight of the two and grins, wide as barn doors. Somewhere mead marinade replaces judgment. He saunters over, words spilling, compliments fermented into crudity. Violet ignores him. Hooded one does not. Her hand emerges, empty but poised, fingers spaced the way a hawk spreads talons. Farmhand leans closer, breath swamp green with cider, palm landing on the table's edge, territorial. Coin still resting there from the butcher's ledger wobbles, rings once. Silence flattens the room. The violet woman speaks, single syllable. It sounds like flint striking. The farmhand blinks, staggers, gropes for meaning. Hooded one lifts her hand, 2 fingers flick the coin, spinning it into the air. It arcs, finds the farmhand's open mouth as if summoned, cracks against a tooth, ricochets to the straw. Shock replaces wine in his veins. Laughter erupts from half the benches. The other half hold breath, waiting for violence. Farmhand's pride surges. He grabs for her wrist. Wrong calculation. She pivots, hooks his thumb, twists. The movement a whisper, the pain a shout. He crumples, knees splashing filth. She releases, letting his own balance decide the rest. The tavern roars approval. Nothing men love more than humiliation wrapped as parable. Stump thumps, Goad cackles metallic. Father Jape murmurs a benediction with a grin. The farmhand scrambles back, clutching hand to chest, eyes watering from more than mead. He retreats to safer shadows, lesson tattooed where skin still throbs. The violet woman finally speaks to the room, voice low but carrying, words shaped like orders disguised as observations. She thanks whoever kept the bench warm. She claims it now, for the night. Anyone object? No one does. Even the coin on the floor stays where it fell, as if the planks themselves hold it hostage. You realize the tavern has pivoted. Authority has slid across stained wood from male fists to female poise. Not softness, steel wearing silk. Stories have new protagonists tonight. A merchant leans toward his companion, whispers speculation. Couriers for the rebel queen beyond the marsh? Hired blades disguised as harlots? But speculation here is like kindling too close to the hearth. Rumors spark fires faster than ale douses them. The barmaid returns, offers fresh mugs. Hooded one nods polite thanks. Violet hands over another coin, insisting. Generosity here is camouflage, but the barmaid pockets it, recognition flickering in her eyes, some debt repaid, old or future. She leaves 2 small plates, bread dark as river stones, cheese pale as dawn. The women eat with the deliberate calm of travelers taught that any meal could be last. Conversation resumes in shards, careful not to scrape their table. The lute remains mute, dice roll softer, even the piss corner mutters less. It's as if every man compares his worth against 2 strangers who crossed thresholds meant to bar them and found no barrier tall enough. Toward midnight, a group of soldiers stomp in, dripping arrogance, armor clacking. They spot the women, share feral smiles. You brace for fracture, but Stump's rod slams the floor. Goad stands, hook glimmering. Father Jape closes his book with a snap like gallows bar. The tavern unites, oddly, around the invader's ignorance. The squad eyes the room, gauges odds, decides beds elsewhere are softer than splinters here. They withdraw, curses trailing like torn banners. Door slams, cold wind sighs out. Violet raises her mug to the house, a toast without words. You and half the patrons lift yours in return, tasting strange solidarity. For a heartbeat the tavern feels almost holy, baptized in reverse, grime to grace. Hooded one tugs her cloak tighter, leans close to whisper something that makes Violet laugh. A rich, unhurried sound, proof that laughter can carry knives. They settle deeper on the bench, content to watch night drain from the sky. You wonder what brought them here and where dawn will carry them. Maybe they're justice in borrowed clothes, or vengeance gathering witness, or simply 2 women who refuse exile from places that smell of sweat and stories. Whatever the truth, they've written a new rule across these beams. A wrong table can become the right one the moment a woman decides it so. And somewhere under the rushes, the tavern itself shifts, learning a fresh heartbeat that doesn't care who first carved the name on the door. Morning crawls into the tavern like an unwanted witness, gray, damp, already regretting what it will have to see. Smoke from the hearth hangs low and sullen, blending with last night's sweat to form a haze thick enough to choke daylight. Someone has dragged 2 heavy trestle tables into the center of the room, end to end, so they make a narrow stage. On it rest 3 battered tankards, a dice cup, and a carving knife, long enough to cut both bread and arguments. No one drinks yet. Ale stands as still as pond water, waiting to find out if it will christen a piece or a corpse. The butcher returns first, apron washed, but still smelling faintly of yesterday's indignation. He plants himself behind one end of the makeshift bench and folds his arms, each scar across his elbow sitting like a notarized seal. Opposite him climbs the mason, ear bandaged, pride stitched with uneven thread. Half the tavern follows, forming ragged ranks along each side of the tables, choosing allegiance the way townsfolk choose weather, whichever cloud seems less likely to spit lightning. Today, there will be no reeve, no sheriff, no priest bold enough to claim jurisdiction. The tavern itself plays courthouse, jury, and executioner. The barmaid stands at one corner with a pitcher in each hand, ale in the left, water in the right, ready to anoint victory or rinse blood, depending on how justice defines itself. Stump, Goad, and Father Jape guard the exits. iron peg, hook, and blackjack forming a silent coat of arms. Even the haunted chair in the far corner seems to lean forward, hungry for precedent. A rule is spoken: 3 charges, 3 rounds. Round of dice, to test fortune. Round of words, to weigh honor. Round of steel, if needed, to close the ledger. The crowd accepts. Nobody devotes thought to what happens if fortune and honor split the vote. That question is for scholars, and scholars rarely survive this bar. The butcher rattles the dice first. They clack inside the cup like impatient teeth, then spill 6 and 5. Gasps skid across the rushes. 11. A roll smug with confidence. The mason's hands are swollen but steady. He blows on the bones, lets them tumble. 5 and 5. 10. Respectable, but still a step behind. Murmurs rustle like dry leaves. Fortune, it seems, still favors the man who sharpens cleavers. Ale splashes into both tankards. They drink, eyeing each other over dented rims. Foam turns mustaches into frothy scowls. When the mugs settle, the second round begins. Words. The butcher speaks of broken oaths, of bacon delivered, of oak undelivered, of rent overdue and patient skin to the bone. His sentences are short, trimmed as neatly as chops on a hook. Each syllable lands like meat on a scale. The mason replies with stories of floods, of blighted trees, of saw blades dulled by knots and winter's spite. He pledges that all debts will be met if walls are left standing long enough to house future promises. His tongue is a trowel, piling mortar between excuses. Some nod, some sneer. Bricks and bacon rarely barter cleanly. The barmaid pours water this time, damping tempers, but not diluting judgment. Now the choice: settle on words and dice, or reach for steel. Tradition says the challenge decides. The butcher lifts the carving knife, studies its edge, then lays it down flat, the metal singing against wood. He nods to the mason. Debt can be paid in labor, he declares, as long as the labor starts before dusk and finishes before the moon hangs twice. Murmurs swell, mercy dressed in butcher's whites. The mason slides his wounded earside palm across the table, sealing the covenant in a smear of dried blood. He swears to stack oak before sunset and throws in an extra pledge: new handles for the butcher's cleavers, carved from heartwood, grained straight as a monk's spine. A fair balm for wounded pride. The barmaid fills 2 fresh glasses and lifts them high so the crowd can see. Ale this time for both. Judgment rendered and accepted. The butcher and mason clink rims softly. A sigh ripples through the audience. Some look relieved, others disappointed that steel stayed sheathed. Justice, when it spares throats, leaves certain appetites unfed. But something shifts at the edge of the gathering. The farmhand from the night before, thumb still purple, swagger fueled by sleepless humiliation. He hoists a jug, slurs accusation, claims the women's coin trick was sorcery, demands their punishment as the true offense of the night. Silence slams down harder than any gavel. Eyes turn toward the butcher's bench doubled as dock, then to the bench now claimed by Violet Cloak and her hooded companion. The violet woman rises, slow as dawn, and steps onto the trestle stage. She does not reach for the knife. She lifts the dice cup. Rattle. Roll. 2 ones. Snake eyes glaring straight up. Gasps flare. She smiles, small and unhurried, as if bad luck were a tame pet. Then she tips the cup to the farmhand, inviting him to try his fate. He lurches forward, seizes it, shakes with drunken vigor. Dice spill, 1 and 1. Jaws drop. Snake eyes again. No one speaks the word witchcraft, but it prowls the rafters. The barmaid moves first, sliding the knife away, replacing it with a tankard of water. She lifts the farmer's trembling hand, makes him drink. Violet returns to her seat. Her companion doesn't bother to look up, confident the storm has passed. The barmaid addresses the room. 1 sentence, level as a spirit measure. Some debts close today, others keep until they learn better manners. The farmhand lowers his gaze and stumbles toward the piss corner, justice of a more natural sort waiting in the trough. Slowly, benches scrape back to their ordinary angles. Dice resume their careless chatter, mugs clink like timid bells, and an argument about sheep prices ignites near the hearth, blessedly mundane. At the center table, the butcher and mason finish their ale, then leave side by side, already planning loads of timber and salt. Outside, the sky finally shows a bruised sliver of blue. Inside, the tavern's trial dissolves into anecdote, shrinking with each retelling until it can be pocketed like a lucky charm. Yet everyone remembers the hush, the knife, and the double snake eyes, proof that fate sometimes sides with the bold, sometimes with the amused, and always with whoever writes the story once the blood dries. Dawn slips under the tavern's door like a shy thief, pale fingers stroking every stain the night couldn't hide. Outside, roosters argue with church bells. Inside, the only ringing is the dull clank of tankards stacked for washing. Smoke lingers in wool tunics and freshly bandaged cuts, but the blaze in the hearth is a weary red core, more memory than fire. You're still here. Somehow the hours between midnight and morning folded themselves into a single splinter-filled blanket, and you wrapped up in it because leaving felt riskier than staying. Your eyes itch, your mouth tastes of ashes and stories you didn't mean to drink. Yet you sit, elbows on a tabletop beaded with dew drawn from ale, watching what survival looks like when it scrubs the floor. The barmaid is first to move. She strides into the gray light carrying a bucket that sloshes brown as riverbed. She tips it over the rushes, and yesterday's blood loosens, smearing into pink rivulets that search for the trough. Straw squeaks under the broom, scraping secrets into compost. Every stroke sounds like a sentence ending. Full stop, full stop, full stop. Stump and goad shuffle about with rough-hewn devotion, lifting benches, righting stools, sorting wood fit for mending from wood fit for kindling. Father Jape kneels near the hearth, muttering what could be prayer or inventory. Either way, the syllables rise in hot wisps before dying against soot-black bricks. Above him, dawn light reveals the words, "God forgive debts," etched in charcoal on the mantel, half erased by smoke. At the far wall, the haunted chair is empty again, coin gone. No one saw it taken, no one admits wanting it. The violet-cloaked woman and her hooded shadow vanished before cockcrow, leaving behind 2 clean mugs and a single violet petal pressed flat beneath one. Quiet proof they ever existed. The butcher departed with a wagon of oak lashed tight as confession, the mason limping beside, sleeves rolled for penance. Somewhere on a cart road, they will trade jokes about who owes whom a drink, the ledger thinner than both expected. You stand, legs noodling, and make your way toward the bar. A battered ledger lies open on the plank, ink blots blooming beside names, debts, half-legible tallies. Some lines are crossed through in thick strokes, others linger, ghost gray, awaiting coin or conscience. Your name appears near the bottom, followed by the number 2, 2 coppers paid last night for water and mercy. Beside it, a new mark has been added, a small, upright slash, meaning you stayed through dawn and therefore owe breakfast. The barmaid appears with 2 bowls and a loaf, porridge laced with something that smells faintly of honey, though it could be just optimism. She sets 1 bowl in front of you, slides the loaf beside it. "Eat before the world finds you hungry," she says, voice hoarse, eyes unreadable, but softer than any hymn Father Jape could manage. You eat. Not quickly. Chewing hurts gums bruised from clenching, but steadily. Warm grain settles arguments in your stomach you never noticed starting. Around you, others drift to tables, drawn by the scent. They chew, sip weak ale or strong water, share nods instead of greetings. Overnight enmities shrank to manageable nuisances. Hunger is a generous editor. Through the window's grease-fogged pane, you spot the mason's apprentice trudging toward the yard, leading a mule stacked with cedar. He gestures to the butcher's door, calling debt paid. The butcher emerges, inspects the load, and, for perhaps the first time since you've known him, smiles without measuring what it costs. Dawn currency, timber, sweat, a scar healing clean. A clatter draws your eye back inside. Stump has tipped a bench to shake loose hidden coins. 2 pennies roll out, one bright, one dull. The bright one rings against his peg, spins, and stops at your boot. Instinct tells you to scoop it. The corner of your mind whispers tales of cursed silver and haunted chair money. You leave it. Stump notices, nudges the coin into his palm, pockets it with a grunt that could mean respect. The barmaid begins her final circuit, tray freshly scrubbed. She's lighter on her feet, as though no blades hide under the apron now, only the ache of another night carried to term. When she reaches you, she tips the ledger so you can see your line. You set 3 coppers, 1 for breakfast, 1 for tomorrow's water, 1 because the petal left by the violet woman made you believe in tipping beauty while it's still warm. The barmaid folds the page, blotting ink with the petal itself, sealing the debt closed. Outside, the bell tower tolls again. Once, twice, thrice. Time to decide. Stay, and the tavern will slide another mark beneath your name by dusk. Go, and the roads will offer their own ledgers. Bandits with ledgers of iron, tollmen with ledgers of parchment, priests with ledgers written in promises. You drain the last of your bowl, wipe mouth with sleeve, and rise. At the door, you glance back. Sunlight now spears through the smoke, revealing dust in lazy galaxies. Broken chairs lean for mending against the wall. The lute has returned to its owner, strings retuned to hope. The shadow table lies vacant, wood grain whispering secrets only silence hears. For a heartbeat, it feels like leaving a church after an unholy mass. Stunned, sobered, strangely grateful. You step into the yard. Mud squelches underfoot where last night it would have swallowed shoes whole. Dawn is kinder, giving earth just enough skin to walk on. You breathe damp air rich with chimney soot and distant sheep. Behind you, hinges creak, door thuds, latch clicks. Each sound an exclamation point closing a chapter you helped write. In your pocket clink the coins you earned, won, or were spared. Warm now against your thigh, they feel lighter than when night pressed them into your hand. Dead men's coins, perhaps, but polished by dawn, they spend the same. You set your boots toward the road, carrying the tavern's smell like a brand in your cloak. Smoke, sweat, ale, and the thin metallic tang of nearly dying. It will fade, eventually. Until then, it reminds you of everything you still have. Voice, fingers, luck measured in heartbeats. Somewhere behind, a broom swishes, a mug cracks, someone laughs at a joke already old. Life in the tavern resets, as relentless and miraculous as bread rising from yesterday's leaven, and you, stomach full and debts settled, walk into a morning that tastes, just barely, of clean water.